Oh, that sounded quite serious. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking time out with very little notice. As I continue to catch up on this grant, I continue to look forward to being much more ahead of the curve. But thanks to you all who saw this talk opportunity and dedicated this time to be here. I appreciate it more than you know. So I don't think I could have gotten a more general title up here, and in a highly transparent presentation. It took me quite a while to settle on what I wanted to go ahead and present to the center staff today. And let me go ahead and show you what I landed on. And I hope that it will be helpful to everyone. First of all, I have met some of you, and some of you I have yet to meet. And just for everyone's knowledge who may not know, I am Maggie Myers, and I'm a clinical social worker, and I'm your project director for the CMHC SAMHSA grant here at the Guidance Center. And I started with you all, I think, today may be my 3-month anniversary, so yay. I have been in the behavioral health field I'm heading into my 25th year. So my first 12 years were in community mental health center, and I was at area mental health center. And if you've even heard of it at all, it is now known as oh goodness, what did they change their name to? I wanted to say Crosswinds, but that's not right. Compass. They changed their name to Compass Behavioral Health a few years ago. So I did several things: adult case management, child case management, was a QMHP, and I got to be a regional director. And then you may want to plug your ears for this next part, and that's okay. Then my past 12 years have been in MCO world. I started at Kansas Health Solutions and went to Amerigroup, and then ended with Sunflower. And I'm glad that brought me to meeting Dr. Warnes, that led me to meeting Keith, and led me to meet all of you as the project director here. And so the presentation objectives I have for us for today, I want to talk about the impact of stigma and self-stigma on mental health treatment. Also want to overview mental illness and mental wellness, and talk about mental health resource development for our team here at the Guidance Center. And finally, just a brief presentation on resources. I do think that our team here would be quite well resourced, more than what I could provide. But just in case, I did want to provide a few things, and we'll talk about our further resource development for our own staff and our own selves later on in the presentation. So I've always loved this little picture of this little mouse. Why, yes, I am a bit stressed. Why do you ask? I really want to challenge everybody that's on the call today. You did not stumble into a helping profession by accident, no matter what your role is here at the Guidance Center, because whatever work you're doing, you could do elsewhere or for a different type of company, and you're here for a reason. And so that means that most of you would, or all of us would tend to have moved toward a tendency of putting other people first, which is fantastic. But I want to challenge us to, during our time together today, some of what I'm presenting is not going to be rocket science in the field of mental and behavioral health and well-being. Some of it will be slightly new. Some of it will be things people have known about for a long time and can speak to better than I can. But I wanted to, my focus on today is to give yourself the permission to take what you're seeing here and think about your own self and think about your well-being. I'm not saying that if there isn't a resource on here that would be good for a friend or someone that you work with or your mother-in-law, that you don't give it to them. What I am saying is I'd like for you to look through all of this as the lens of it is okay and important for me to think about and consider where I am in my own mental health today and moving forward. So anyone that spent more than 5 minutes with me knows that I can tell a lot of stories. So here are, I'm going to tell you 2 stories today. And the first one is about a canoe trip and a trip that I subsequently took to Wesley Medical Center. So when I was in undergraduate school, I had the opportunity to do some in-state mission work. And one of the things that I did during the summer was be, along with my peers, be a camp counselor for a camp that also included a canoe trip down the Arkansas River outside of Arkansas City. And I had made the decision that I was extremely comfortable with taking care of certain basic needs outdoors. So I severely limited my water in order to be sure I wouldn't have to do that very much. So flash forward, I start getting these really bad back aches and people are trying to pop my back. At times people are trying to stand on my back. And then I just got really weak and started missing events. And finally, everybody kind of put the pieces together that I might need some medical care. And so we got me to some people who got me to a thermometer, which I don't know why we waited this long, and realized I had a temperature of 105. So I got to go to Wesley Medical Center for 4 glorious days and have treatment for a quite severe kidney infection. So that got taken care of, and I've modified my water intake accordingly. So that's the happy news of this story. I wanted to tell you a second story that I've had, and this is a little bit of a different journey. There was a time in my life after I was in my first series of jobs and had completed undergraduate school that I was around a really good, trusted group of people that were planning on going in a certain direction with their career. And I thought that's what I was going to do too. But I really deep in my heart felt like it wasn't for me. And for reasons internal and external, I became depressed. And so I went ahead and was fortunate to be able to get some help and go into therapy and visit with the therapist about how I was feeling and also how I was feeling about my career. I've shared this story with some of you here, but it's only recently that I have. And what I ended up doing was the therapist had asked me, what do you think you would like to do? And I said, I think I'd like to do what you do. And I was really expecting them to say, you know, you're in therapy yourself. Are you sure you're in the best, you know, state to be thinking about eventually becoming a therapist? But instead, the therapist said to me, okay. And we, it was not like turning on a light, but there were things I needed to do to get ready. But I was able to find people to shepherd me through the process. And I went back and I had a resolution of my depression. I was able to go forward and say, do one of the singularly most important things I've ever done in my life, which is to get my master's in social work. Wherever my life has taken me, I'm always grateful that I've had that education and had that experience. So, which story do I share with people most often? I will tell you, I share the canoe story with people the most often. And the reason why is I have to share with you, you are some of the kindest people I know, but I'm very highly uncomfortable right now that I just told you all that I'm in therapy. And that discomfort on my part and worrying about other people's reaction, when obviously I was during the canoe trip, I was making a lot of really, really bad choices that I thought would help me and didn't. And I got medical care, but yet it's easier to talk to people about having a need for medical care than it is to talk to other people about having a need for mental health care. And even though we are in the field, we are far from exempt from that. So I take more courage than I should have to tell you this story today, in the hopes that it joins other people in their stories. And if there is someone, you know, that is struggling out there, and we'll talk about the struggle rates that people have, that we continue to talk things through here and societally, to where it's common for us to talk about mental health care without confusion or embarrassment as often and as readily as we do medical care. So before getting into more of a discussion about the impact of stigma, I want to go back and just hit some basic reminders about mental illness. And so mental illness is health conditions that involve change in emotion, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of those. And these conditions cause distress or problems, or both, in functioning within social, work, or family activities. So mental illness, one thing we need to know about it, and I think one thing that we know about it from our work, is it is common. And so, and as mental health people working in the field, we are not somehow magically exempt from that due to knowledge or circumstance. So in a given year, 19% of US adults have some form of a mental illness or episode of mental illness. And about 1 in 24 has a serious mental illness, and that is defined below here on the slide, and give some examples of serious mental illnesses, including major depression, schizophrenia, and bipolar. And then also 1 in 12 has a diagnosable substance use disorder. So mental illness is treatable, and the vast majority of individuals with mental illness continue to function in their daily lives. So what are we talking about when we talk about mental health and mental illness? So mental health, the state of good or positive mental health, involves effective functioning in daily activities that cause us to have productive activities such as work, school, and caregiving, being able to be a part of healthy relationships. And also it gives us ability to adapt to change, cope with adversity, and be flexible. And so when mental illness is present, this is a term that does refer collectively to all diagnosable mental health disorders, from adjustment disorders to the most profound schizophrenia. And these are health conditions involving significant changes in thinking, emotion, and or our behavior, and distress and or problems functioning in certain domains of life, including our social life, work, and with family. And mental health is seen as the foundation for our emotions, thinking, communication, resilience, and self-esteem, and a key to our ability to contribute to society, engage effectively in meaningful relationships. And we know this too, I believe, but I think it's just important for us to continue to remember it, is that mental illness does not discriminate. It impacts a variety of age groups, gender, no matter where you live, what your income, your social status, your race and ethnicity, where you are spiritually, your sexual orientation, and your background and your raising. All of this, there's not one group in there that would provide us with exceptional protection. These are things that impact all people across all life domains. And while an episode of mental illness can happen at any age, 3/4 of all mental illness begins by the age of 24. And mental illness is on a continuum as far as how much it impacts a person. Some may have a mild form and notice only small ways that it impacts day-to-day life. And as we've seen, other mental health conditions can be more severe and have more of a daily impact. So I wanted to move back to the discussion of stigma and mental illness and how it impacts our dialogue about mental illness and different ways that it impacts us. So according to the APA, more than half of people who experience a mental illness don't receive help for their disorders. Often people will delay getting treatment or avoid it due to concerns about being treated differently or fears about losing their jobs and livelihood. And stigma's foundation is built on fear often. And there can be inaccurate or misleading media representation of mental illness. And a review of studies on stigma shows that the public is growing to greater acceptance of the medical or genetic nature of mental health conditions and treatment needs. There is still a negative perception that's being fought against. And I wanted to visit a little bit about both public stigma and self-stigma. And public stigma would involve negative attitudes that others may hold about mental illness. Self-stigma is what I experience when I have trouble talking to a group of mental health professionals about mental health treatment. Self-stigma is the negative attitude, including internalized shame that people with mental health conditions have about their own condition. And stigma can not only affect someone who's experiencing an episode of mental illness, but also loved ones and other people who provide support. So, what are the harmful effects of stigma and, by extension, discrimination? And both of these things can contribute to people having worsening symptoms and feeling not good about pursuing treatment. And a research review has found that self-stigma can lead to negative recovery effects, including reduced hope, lower self-esteem, increased psychiatric symptoms, difficulty with social relationships, reduced likelihood of staying committed with treatment, and more difficulties with work. And the APA had also cited a 2017 study involving 200 individuals with mental illness over a period of 2 years that found that greater self-stigma was associated with poorer recovery from mental illness after 1 to 2 years. So some other impacts are reluctance to seek help or treatment, or not feeling comfortable to stay with treatment once started, maybe pulling away and social isolation, feeling not understood by important people in your life. For some people, the impacts extend into work, school, and social activities, even to the point of housing, depending on the individual situation. And can have the belief that you'll not be able to succeed at certain challenges, or that you can't improve your situation. So what can be done to address stigma? And I think after a very long period of time, we're starting to see more of a renaissance of understanding in regard to mental illness, but I know there's still ways for people, for all of the situation to go. A 2016 review of research on addressing stigma has concluded that stigma and discrimination, the efforts to reduce it, can work both personally and at population levels. Strongest evidence was connected to anti-stigma efforts involving contact with individuals with lived experience with mental illness and efforts with a long-term commitment. And we're seeing more and more celebrities be more open about their mental health issues, and that helps pull things out of the shadows and be a part of more conversations. So the National Alliance on Mental Illness offers some suggestions about what we can do to help reduce stigma. And some of them I'm pushing myself to do here today with you all, because I think it's important. And there's a lot I would do to help other people. And I know that you all are the same way. And so with that, I'm always willing to try something that will help other people. It's also because of how we're built, it's important to remember that it's okay for us to take care of ourselves as well. So the first thing is to be able to talk more openly about mental health. When I worked in the mental health center in Ulysses, my boss was named Rick Dahlke. And what people in the community said about him is he just was really open and just normalized mental health to the point that he was just a one-man stigma reducer. And so he was someone I was able to see how he did that and how he operated and how he was protected people's privacy and confidentiality, but also generated an atmosphere where if you're in a situation where something can happen to 1 in 5 people, we need to be able to know about it and talk about it. Also, to educate yourself and others, respond to misperceptions or negative comments. Be ready to share facts and experiences. And that's true too if you're experiencing self-stigma. Do your own research. Those of you that have been extensively educated in this, draw on that for yourself as well. Be conscious of language and remind people that words matter. And maybe if the weather is up and down, we don't describe it as being bipolar. That's one in many sorts of sayings that just become embodied in our way of communication. But just being conscious about our language. Continuing to encourage equality or parity between physical and mental illness. We all understand and accept cancer or diabetes treatment. Mental health treatment is on that same path. We also want to show compassion for those with mental illness. I know everyone here that's on this call does that, and everyone at this center. Be honest about treatment that help normalize it. It would be what you would do just like if you had a health issue develop. And also choosing empowerment over shame. The NAMI site cited this individual who was just speaking to her own experience on Facebook. I fight stigma by choosing to live an empowered life. To me, that means owning my life and my story and refusing to allow others to dictate how I view myself or how I feel about myself. And this was in the response to, how do you fight stigma? Alrighty, my next cartoon, I think everybody can see it, but just if you can't, we have a chef who says, let me check on my mental health really quick. He drops down the oven. There is a huge fire in the oven. And he says, I'm going to give it just a few more minutes. So that's just kind of an example of the kicking the can down the road that can sometimes happen for us when we may have some signals that we need some help. So when I say next steps here, I want to share some next steps, why you're hearing from me. And as the year progresses, I know you'll be hearing from others on the team. But it's like, why are we hearing from Maggie today, who's directing the grant? I'm grateful to report that one of the things that happened in the SAMHSA grant is that they tapped us to make sure that we are taking steps toward having more resources for our mental health resources for our mental health staff who have worked their way through the pandemic, as you all have. And plus, even prior to that, we definitely had situations where all of you have been helping people who are having some of the worst days and worst experiences of their lives on a day-to-day basis. And that can often take a toll. So in the next weeks, one of the things you'll be seeing is a staff survey to give us an idea. We'll be structuring it for the areas that each of you feel like, hey, I need more resources, I need more knowledge, I need more ways to get help with this. So be looking forward to that survey, and we'll be looking forward to getting your feedback. Also, we're working internally here to enhance resources. We've had some feedback about the current employee assistance program and some challenges there. So Kristen and I, and I'm sure others, are working on trying to find a path to a more robust EAP program that is able to expand the help and coverage that people need when they need to visit with someone. Also, we will be working with leadership to develop an internal committee who will be planned to meet monthly on this topic to help us identify priorities from the staff survey and cross-reference that with our current resources and our resource needs to increase and prioritize the things that we bring out for the staff to make sure that our own mental health and well-being stays in the forefront this year and beyond. And also at the beginning of my presentation, I want to offer you to kind of take this time or take some time after this meeting or in the days to come and just kind of do your own self-check. If circumstances have put you on the back burner and there's signs of distress that you feel like you've had to push back in yourself in order to handle other things, I just encourage you to take the time to do a self-check with yourself about your own perceived needs. Employee assistance programs, or EAPs, are commonly available through employers. We do have one here, and we will make sure you have those details before you leave today. And they do help employees deal with a variety of concerns, work-life stressors, mental and emotional well-being, family issues. It can even move into financial and legal concerns and relationship problems. I have taken advantage of EAPs at almost every workplace that I've been a part of. Mental health is hard, people. And so it was important for me to have that resource to be able to check and make sure that all parts of my life, were in balance as I help people in different ways assure that same thing for their own lives as a mental health professional. We wanted to highlight that EAP programs often go unused, that about 3 to 5% of employees use available EAP services. So while we are continuing to work on ideas to amplify our EAP, we do have one already, and it is a resource that is present and can be used and has a tendency to be underused. Team, I will make sure too that we get out a copy not only of this recording, but also of this PowerPoint. I think a good way may be to have a home for it on our SharePoint site. But as I mentioned before, I did not list a lot of resources here. Everyone's access to lists of resources may be different based on what they do for work here at the Guidance Center or other things they've needed to research before. I picked these three just because the National Institute for Mental Health America, and SAMHSA, each of these will provide a link to good information in the form of flyers about different mental health conditions. Also, there are additional resources to be able to help find a therapist. EAP program should be able to help with that too. And these are just good. Some of these, the Mental Health America has some good self-check tools to be able to use too, which is why I went ahead and included them. And so again, I don't have any problem with anybody sharing these with anyone else at all. But again, I want to encourage everybody to use this time and use this day to be able to give themselves the time to think about themselves first in this instance and your own needs. And so I hope you'll find some resources on here that may be helpful to you if you're checking in with yourself and needing more structure on what that might mean, or how I might do a self-check, or what do I do next if I have some needs. The last thing is our employee assistance program through the Guidance Center is available through our Guardian program, and this is the 1-800 number for that. Most of the times an employee assistance program consists of having a staff member with the EAP ask you some questions to ascertain your need, and can go ahead and move you into the services and get you some referrals to be able to visit with a therapist or with another type of provider, depending on what your needs are. And the last thing I would like to say to you before we close this presentation today is I know I've only been here 3 months, and there's a lot of you I have not met individually, but I want to thank you and let you know, along with this little child and his pump fist, that you do rock. And here's why you rock. Each of you has lived through a pandemic. You have helped some people that were experiencing very, very difficult mental health challenges and continue to do so at all levels. And you did it during very uncertain times. And you did it when you had your own things to worry about and your own families to worry about. And you showed up as frontline workers to be able to check and make sure that people are cared for and had everything that they need to. And even prior to the pandemic, you were people that often were very self-sacrificing in order to check and make sure that others who struggle the most and are the most vulnerable had a place to go and had a place to seek treatment and had a place to seek help and support. And so I know that as I meet more of you one-on-one, that will be reinforced. But I know CMHCs and I know the caliber of the folks that work there. And I also am getting to know the guidance center. And I'm very pleased and proud to be a part of your team and look forward to working with you in this area and the other areas for the grant. Hey, you guys, what I would like to do now is I am not really for today planning on much of a Q&A session or anything like that, mainly because we are being recorded and I want, if people have anything that they need to think or discuss about more privately, I want them to have that private time to do that. So for today, I just want to thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your time. And I'd like to give you the remaining time of this hour just to have some time to do a little bit of a self-check, or even if it's candidly, if it's even just to get to the restroom or get a drink of water or get outside before your next appointment. Even that would be a good thing to help us move through the next phases of what we need to do each day. So, hey team, again, thank you so much for your time and for all of your efforts here. And I hope you can take these next 21 minutes for yourself. See you soon.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thanks, you guys.